Inside your radio, Rural Radio, Sirius XM 147, Outside the Barrel. We're back with Flint.
There's sometimes I just don't feel like I'm the friend I should be. Used to be monthly with Mason, and then it was every 6-7 weeks. It's been too long, and I hope he accepts me back into his life. He's our very good friend. All things ag, all things travel, whatever we want to talk about. This is our man. It's Damian Mason. Are we still friends, Damian? Are we good?
Flint, I could never bear the idea that just because you don't call, you don't write, you don't care about me, that somehow our friendship is eroded. I mean, come on. I mean, it's deeper than that, isn't it?
Every once in a while we comment. I share your things on social media. I'm innocent. That's the new way to be friends, isn't it? To just like, oh my gosh, we're such good friends. He liked my post on Twitter. Isn't that how we do it now?
Well, on the one hand, social media saves time and it connects people like you and me. That's good. But is it the same thing as getting together and drinking beers and talking about, actual stuff? Probably not. So, no, I'd say that we're fine. You needn't worry. Our friendship is intact. I keep up with you as well. And again, every time my wife sees something of yours on social media, she reminds me that when I say, Flint and I, we're buds, and she says, yeah, but he's a better dancer than you.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad your wife noticed that. That time she and I went out dancing together, we had a large time. We got along swimmingly. So what's happening?
The last time my wife saw you dance was at an arena in downtown Phoenix, and there were large bovine critters flopping around, and you were on the mic. So I don't know that she was as actively involved as you were in the dancing, but she thinks the world of your dancing. I can tell you that.
Yeah, that's a story of my life. They're not nearly as actively involved as I am. Anyway, so things going on, and I never make it a secret. You always send me some good thoughts that you'd like to share. But the first thing you sent me this week that I did want to talk about, because I don't keep up like I should. I don't watch the news as much as I should, just because everything has become, well, the Oxford Dictionary's word of the year, toxic, that it turns me off. But I did try to keep up with some trade issues in the country, because I know way last fall we talked and you said this is all going to work itself out. The trade issues with other countries that our ag people thought were going to affect them. So give me an update. Good, bad, what's getting worked out there?
Yeah. A lot of the folks in the business of agriculture don't agree with me, and then they get scared. And this industry of food production is a really interesting thing. They tend to be very conservative. They tend to, a little joke is, farmers and ranchers never make any money. Just ask them. I mean, they love to go to the coffee shop and every day lament that they're not making any money. And the reality is, right now things are a little tough. We're in our fifth year of downward pricing on all commodities, really, from corn, soybeans to beef to everything is a little down. And some folks wrongly are blaming this on trade. And I keep saying, trade disputes did not create these prices. Supply creates these prices. The world has a lot of stuff. We've got too much milk, too much corn, too much soybeans, which is what sets the prices. Now, trade issues usually then do cause some friction, because then we're sitting on some supply that we can't get rid of. But the reality is the world's pretty well got enough stuff. One thing that's really happening, and this was just in the news this week, China is actually realizing that we're serious. And, you can like or dislike Donald Trump, and I know there's plenty of people that love to fight over that, but he's the first president that's really stood up. Just yesterday, now China is getting a little pressure from the World Trade Organization about things that they do. For instance, copyright infringement. They steal technology. They force any Western company that wants to do business in China has to turn over all of their intellectual property rights to them, and also do joint ventures with the Chinese government. So we've done these things because we want access to 1.4 billion people in a market, but it's not been good for us. So China really does play very much to their whatever works for them. they are starting to come around because they're running out of soybeans, so they're going to end up having to buy our product. They might even, and they're buying it sometimes, Flint, that's not even American soybeans directly sold to them. It's American soybeans sold to a third party and then going there. It's kind of like how people used to travel to Cuba by going to Toronto first.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
So we've got, I do believe it's going to work out. Just yesterday, the news was Australia and a couple of these other countries are watching how we're the heavy hammer, how we work things out with China, because there is going to be a meeting with the Chinese president at the end of this month and our president. They're meeting in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I do believe that we're going to end up with getting some things shook out on the trade front. But the big point is, to the person listening to your show that's a soybean producer in Missouri or a cattle producer in Colorado, I know that they're going to get mad and say, well, we got low prices because of this trade dispute. Well, we really have low prices because we've got so much stuff. Supply sets prices. Trade is not really what sets prices. Granted, it doesn't help.
Yeah. I have a couple minutes left in this segment, but we always, animal rights people, California does it again. Chickens, eggs, coming through for us again in a few years, aren't they?
Yeah, you and I love to talk about this because obviously you're in the business that is rodeo, it utilizes animals for part of our sport and entertainment. And, of course, you and I first hooked up several years ago over a pig wrestling
Right.
A pig wrestling protest. There was going to be some county fair, and I think it was Wisconsin, where they're going to let children go out and wrestle with a pig. And, oh, my goodness, the animal rights wackos came out of the woodwork. And I think that's how you and I first hooked up, because I put a lot of stuff out there on social media of how ridiculous this is and that this radical fringe uses this thing. Well, that's what's going on now, if you will. California 10 years ago invented Proposition 2, which set different, they said it has to have a certain amount of space, but they didn't give a number. And, of course, these animal rights radicals like to make laws that are ambiguous. That way they can then come back and protest them again. And that's really exactly what's happened. 10 years ago, passed Proposition 2 is about animal space, so for chickens and for pigs or whatever. And then, of course, after that got enacted, said, oh, wait a minute. Now you've all made the adjustment, agriculture. It's still not enough. These poor animals still need more space. So what they're really trying to do then is once something becomes accepted, they then come in a second time and say, well, it's still not enough. It'd be the same thing in bull riding. Well, we want the bulls to have, diapers and they need to have, pens with pillows in them. And then you would do that. And then they would say after 3 years, well, that's still not enough. What you really need is to do this, because the angle isn't about animal comfort. The angle really is about establishing control, and that's what the PETAs and the humane societies and the radical groups are out to do.
Yeah, and so cage-free chickens by 2022. Cage-free chickens and eggs.
And it won't just be. It won't be, Flint, just the chickens that are raised in California. If you want to sell an egg in California, it has to be from a chicken that is not in cages. So, in other words, if you're in Iowa or anywhere else that raises chickens or eggs, the chickens and the eggs, doesn't matter which one came first.
Well, it doesn't matter.
Have to be have to be cage free, and that's a 37 or 38 million person marketplace, California. So lots of folks would like to have that marketplace, but are they going to comply? And nobody wants to have mistreated animals and stacked up to their rafters and their own feces. So we're doing a really good job in agriculture. It's just a matter of now this law, largely pushed by animal rights activists. In fact, PETA doesn't even think it goes far enough. They are at odds with the Humane Society of the United States, saying this law doesn't go far enough in protecting these poor chickens. So now everybody that wants to sell a chicken or an egg in California is going to have to comply with their laws. Opens up room for fraud. Does increase expenses. And the bigger point that I make all the time is, and when you get back from break, I'll share this with you, why you can never satisfy animal rights radicals, because this law passed, and trust me, in another 2 years, there'll be another iteration of it saying, well, it didn't go far enough, because the real issue is control.
Okay, that's where we're going to start when I come back. Damian Mason's with us. Oh, good stuff. Going to talk about more, maybe some Thanksgiving after this.
back outside the barrel with two guys who have dogs with high IQs. Damian knows what I'm talking about. Back with Flint.
The license plate.
Yeah.
High, what, K9 IQ. I saw that. Damian, what was it? I can't remember.
Funny? Yeah. Wasn't that funny? So, since you and I, as we mentioned before the break, keep up via social media, I see stuff that just makes me chuckle. And, of course, our friend Shannon had to, bump into the segment talking about that. A license plate that said high, H-I, IQ, K9. And I thought, oh, my goodness, for a decade it was my kid's an honor student at Sunnymead Elementary School, my kid's an honor student, blah, 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 blah. And now we've gone to vanity plates bragging about the intelligence of one's dog.
Yeah. He still poops into the place he sleeps, though. So
I was going to say, what you got to always do to straighten these people out is if the woman had walked out, or man who owned a car, and I was standing there taking a picture of their license plate, I would have said, I'll bet you no matter how smart your dog is, if I left the toilet open, it would drink out of a toilet.
He'd drink out of it. Well, who doesn't? Who doesn't, really? Damian, do you know that the state that consumes the most turkey over Thanksgiving? Do you know what state that is? There's my trivia for you.
Well, I don't, but one would go again with population, California being the most populous state. But then again, they've got the tree huggers and the vegans in there, so maybe it's not California.
No, don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. It's California. It's true.
Yeah, because of the most people. Because you got 37 million people.
Yeah, so what you said before the break, that with the chickens, cage free, but like you point out with animal rights groups or activist type groups, never satisfied. So the law passed, but there will be something else come up.
Sure. Now that's the thing. And of course, your listeners are saying, hey, man, I tune in because Flint talks about rodeo. Why does this matter to me? Well, most of your listeners are in rural areas, and rural areas are where we grow food. Every person that's listening to your show eats food. And we also like to state, Flint, that the old thing of what happens on the coasts works its way inland. Now, some things we hope to God do not. But the thing with California, the Humane Society has made a big stand there on things like pushing laws that by the year 2022, no chicken nor egg consumed, sold in the state of California or raised or produced in California can be in a cage. Now, that means they're going to be in a barn that's open. Now, here's the thing. Because you can never really satisfy animal rights radicals. That's what they're happy with now, but they're never really happy. Obviously, if you don't eat meat, you're never happy. You're just always in this you're in like a protein-deprived rage your entire life. So your point that years ago you and I connected over a pig wrestling event for children at a county fair, and the protesters were against it. So let's say you get rid of the pig wrestling at the fair. Now, they've gotten that accomplished, which means they won. And we think, oh, well, we appeased the wackos. Now they'll leave us alone. No, because the protest class needs a protest. It's the old thing of the cause needs the cause. Worst thing in the world is when now they have nothing else to protest. They have nothing else to bitch about. So what happens? They're going to be back next year, not over pig wrestling, but over pig showing. And you're saying, wait a minute, protesters, we don't wrestle them. We just go out. Yes, but you walk them around in a ring and beat them with a cane for show. And these animals are being mistreated. And then you say, okay, God, I guess we're going to get rid of the pig show. And then the next year they'll be back and say, but you're serving milkshakes. Don't you realize that that's cruel to milk cows? The point is you can never satisfy radicals, and where we screw up as a society is we let those 2 to 5% radical, well-funded, vocal whacknuts steer the conversation and also control us. Again, if it's rodeo, I don't think we should be barrel racing because I read about a horse that tore its Achilles heel once in a barrel racing event, so we should ban barrel racing. And then eventually they get loud enough and we ban barrel racing, and then it's the next thing and the next thing.
It's the suspensory. They always strain their suspensory, just so you know. I'm a barrel horse.
Okay, well, you're the horse guy. You've got those two lovely daughters, and I know they're horse riders, and you are too.
Yeah.
Here's why I guess I can do to really illustrate this, and I've been doing this with my ag audiences. This just happened last week. The Girl Scouts organization is suing the Boy Scouts. And so to put this in perspective, in 1991, a girl named Margot Goldstein wanted to be a Boy Scout in Florida. Her brothers were Boy Scouts. she joined and eventually was going to go on an overnight camping trip. And then finally people are like, hey, wait a minute, man, we can't have this like 10 or 11-year-old girl out here camping with a bunch of boys and a male leader. I mean, my God, you're setting us up for potential, real problems. A girl out here and, camping with. She sued. So that's been almost 30 years ago. And that was the first suit against the Boy Scouts for not allowing girls in. And you might remember a few years ago, this got to a fever pitch. It was derogatory. It was gender biased. These Boy Scouts not letting girls in. So now the Boy Scouts finally caved. If you're transgender, you can be a member of Boy Scouts or a leader of Boy Scouts. They'll let girls in. So finally this year, Boy Scouts said, we're going to stop marketing ourselves as Boy Scouts. And they started putting out ads saying, go scouting, join Scouts. Girl Scouts sued, now saying that it's infringement upon them because you're trying to steal our members. Now think about this. For 30 years, Boy Scouts have been getting sued since 1991, the girl in Florida. They've been maligned in the media as being anti-female, which they're not. They've been saying you're exclusive. Well, of course you are, but there's a version of scouting called Girl Scouts. And you're saying, Damian, what's this have to do with the business of agriculture and my listeners here when we're talking about animal rights? Anything that you do where you try to appease the radical fringe, it never is enough. The Boy Scouts finally caved in, and once they did, now they're being lawsuited again.
Because they're stealing. That's hilarious.
If you're going, it's the old thing, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Giving in only strengthens. It's the old thing of what you tolerate, you actually endorse.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Listen, there's more I'd like to talk about, but we're out of time. But I'm just going to say this, and I don't have much time, but we were going to talk about there's a big trend right now, thank a farmer. I have a friend that started a clothing company, and he has a T-shirt that says, I ranch so you can eat. My friend Kurt Blake and I, we were going to make T-shirts that say, we eat so you can ranch. That's kind of the gist, right? It's like, hey, thank us for eating, right?
I'm so glad you brought this up, Flint. Here it is, Thanksgiving week, and you and I both have a tremendous amount to be thankful for. Lovely family, enjoy our business. We like our work. And I obviously make a living speaking to the business of agriculture. I go to corporate and association meetings all over North America. In fact, if you're listening and you're saying, hey, I've got a 2019 meeting, call Damian Mason. You can find me everywhere, Damian Mason, at Damian P. Mason. Flint can tell you. Anyway, here's the thing I tell my agricultural audiences. It's nice that you are so proud of what you do, but also let's realize this is your job. This is your business. Thank a farmer. Okay, what about thank the dry cleaner? What about thank the car wash person? What about thank the pilot that gets me to where I need to be so I can earn a living?
Thanks, Shannon. Thanks, Shannon.
Let's thank Shannon Solo for producing
right.
Outside the Barrel.
That's
the
right.
reality is we get a little overzealous, and ag people do have a tendency sometimes to pull that thing of, well, if you eat, you should thank me, because without me, well, without a lot of folks, without the person that created the cell phone. What about what I really believe that agriculture needs to do is take a minute and thank the consumer, because we have such a vast array of money being spent on food and beverage in this country. Here in North America, there's a lot of money going around, right? We're both, Canada and the United States, very well-off countries. So if we really want to talk about who should be thanked, we should thank the consumers and not carry on about thanking a rancher or thanking a farmer. People might thank you, Flint, for doing a great job there on the PBR, being an entertainer and MC and host as you are. But you also do that because it's your job and you're well paid for it.
Yeah.
Let's be thankful. If we're going to talk about who should be thankful in agriculture, we should be thankful for the variety. There is more variety of food in North America today than there has ever been before. You can go to the Safeway, the Albertsons, the Piggly Wiggly, the Kroger, and get more variety of food than was ever available before. More options. It is more safe. And I know that they love to in the media talk about, oh, there was a peanut recall, or there was somebody got E. coli down in Tallahassee. In 325 million people, our amount of foodborne illness is so negligible. It does make the media when we have 2 people get sick in Cleveland. Come on. safer, more affordable, fresher, and in greater variety than it's ever